Welcome to this week's edition of the 6-5 podcast. I'm your host today, Daniel Newman, principal analyst, founding partner at Futurum Research, joined by my esteemed colleague and mustache-wearing friend. You see these? Patrick Moorhead of Moor Insights Strategy. What started as a joke ended up being a commitment through the podcast, which was supposed to be recorded earlier in the day, but since we waited, I had to wear this mustache all day long. And by the way, it's weak. I got some weak mustache game. I'm not going to lie, but that thing's looking good. I'm not sure. I'm gonna suggest that you shave that. I think you should keep that for a while. What do you think?
I don't know. I think I'm going to open this up to Twitter to see if they think I should keep this going. So we'll do a little Twitter poll afterwards, and nobody's allowed to vote the opposite of what they actually think. But Daniel, it is another exciting day in Austin, Texas. We have had another company move its headquarters here. Last week, Elon Musk said he's moving, or he has moved to Texas, which is pretty exciting. And just about an hour ago, Oracle announced it was moving its corporate headquarters from Silicon Valley to Austin, Texas. And really happy about that. I know people are mixed here in Austin of, are we Californiating our Texas, right? But I grew up in the Rust Belt. I feel much better when businesses are coming in and there's more opportunities for folks, but it certainly does point out the business-friendly disparity between the two states.
Yeah, make no mistake. Texas has been on a very strong trajectory of encouraging and accepting companies from all over the world, as well as individuals that see a very tax-friendly destination with mostly a good climate, a little hot in the summer, affordable housing, although in Austin it's getting less and less as the days go by. But the conditions are ripe, and we've heard venture capital and funds and tech and automotive companies all kind of saying, if the situation doesn't change, we're going to move. And we're starting to see the rubber meet the road. Oracle this week, HPE last week, albeit not Austin, but Houston, Elon Musk. But this isn't only these companies. I mean, we've had CEOs from some big companies relocating to Austin. And of course, you've got a big presence from ARM and AMD, Google, Apple, Dell. I mean, Dell was like the godfather of Austin in terms of tech. So it's happening. It's very interesting, Pat. It's going to be something to watch. But the talent, I mean, you can, even as expensive as Austin's gotten, you can still get probably 5 times the home for your money. And you've got some talented people. You got a great college. You have a little bit more of a diverse part of Texas in terms of mix of red and blue. It's very purple in Austin, which gives that good mix. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be encouraged, and that's the reason it's still on my list of places to relocate to here from Chicago. By the way, no state taxes. I mean, how nice is that for most people? All right, but our show, buddy, this week was insane. All right, everybody out there, I just want to say that it's 5:52 Central Time here on a Friday, and we're recording this because we're very committed to our audience. We appreciate all of you that subscribe and regularly tune into the 6-5 podcast. And this week was kind of what I would call it was the storm before the calm. Yeah. We are heading into the holidays here, New Year's and Christmas holiday, and all the holidays, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Happy, 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 and merry, merry, merry. All the companies were getting their last events on. This week we had, let's just do a quick run through, Pat, because you know what? We probably could have done 2 shows, but we had the Intel Analyst Summit. We had WebexONE, the big Cisco collaboration summit. We had continuations of AWS reInvent. We had Marvell had their Analyst Day. Greenlake from HPE had a Greenlake Day.
That SAP
Tech Ed was this week. And then there was a bunch of small events. Microsoft had some open houses. We had a big council meeting with a few of our other vendors, a bunch of, announcements. We had earnings this week, Oracle, which we'll talk about today. So just lots going on, Pat. We got a great show. We're going to try to hit on a lot of these things. We can't hit them all. We'll come back to some of these, to more topics. Next week will be a little slower. We might be able to actually even revisit some things that were this week. But thanks all for tuning in. Let's get at it. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, buddy. Let's talk about Cisco's WebexONE and a few acquisitions they've made. How about you start off? You talk about the event. I'll talk about the acquisitions.
Yeah. So first off, WebexONE is the once-a-year conference. It's really the big bang about Cisco's Webex. If you're going to see new devices, new capabilities, this is the show that it's going to come out. And the first thing that grabbed your attention was the commitment to innovate to drive 10x better than in-person experiences, which talk about making a huge commitment. Now, I couldn't quite find out exactly how that 10x is measured, but it certainly is provocative. And the company did overturn pretty much everything. So an all new WebEx for meetings, messaging, calling, an expanded people insights that allows you to better manage your on-the-go and hybrid workforces, a brand new WebEx contact center that if you think about customers calling in, either in a call center or even sales for agents, business of all sizes, they updated their software to be better integrated into the calling function. There was also the addition of a new hub. While WebEx, it doesn't like Office 365 and Teams and Google Workspace, they don't have a built-in productivity, but Cisco's answer is to have what they consider best-in-breed integrations with Dropbox, with Box, with Slack, and a ton of other integrations. And then finally, you can't run software on air was a bunch of new hardware devices. And my take on the new hardware devices, Daniel, is getting a little bit closer to better serving the needs of a hybrid workforce. So first off, you had a 4K camera that works on a PC that is a managed camera and has some of those facial recognition and the ability to see who's in the room capabilities. So call it a smart camera. And then there's the desk hub where you can bring your smartphone, your headphones, or even a laptop and dock it, for lack of a better term. And I really liked a use case where you walk in to maybe your satellite office, or maybe it's your day to go into the office, and you ask, hey, where's their desk available? And it tells you where it is. Then you take your stuff and you park it. And then there's another solution called Desk, which is the kind of the smaller version of the Desk Pro that you and I have. So lower cost. And then finally, although this didn't get a whole lot of news, 2 mil-spec smartphones, VoIP smartphones based on Wi-Fi. But to me, if I look at where Cisco was 3 or 4 years ago in terms of devices and where they are today, they're getting a lot closer to what I think this new way of working and hybrid work. Now, make no mistake, this only runs WebEx and the integrations, which is a different kind of strategy that, let's say, a Poly or somebody like that takes. It is a more integrated. And really what they were talking about is with integration comes consistency of experience, consistency of management, and consistency in security, which again, I think a pretty good value proposition if that's what you're looking for. So that was really my, I would call it the 5,000 foot version. I really want to experience it to get hands-on with these devices, to get a better appreciation. Because I'll be honest with you, on the Desk Pro, I wasn't too excited when I was told one was coming, but now that I have it, I look forward to our morning Desk Pro chats that is better than a PC-based or a smartphone-based experience.
Yeah, I would say there's just no doubt, Pat, whatsoever that the the desk dedicated device still stands as the better way to do it. It's just not reasonable at scale at this point. Now, Cisco did make a little bit of a move here by coming out with a series of more capable, more size and cost efficient dedicated appliances. But being a Desk Pro user, I think my tweet was, I have a Desk Pro. I love it. I use it. That's the whole email. That's the whole text, the whole tweet. But at the same time, we do have this hybrid workforce. We do have our PCs. People largely are doing this on their PCs and mobile devices. So I think Cisco's trying to address all of those things. With that in mind, I do think the hub was an important add. I think integration is important. I think the closed architecture certainly adds value. I think the one thing Cisco just have to keep considering is, unfortunately, we don't only work with one platform because our customers are mixed. Some of our customers will be using Teams. Some of our customers will be using Zoom. And that's probably the only thing, Pat, I do really wish, if anything, I wish I could use my Desk Pro for those other calls, and that would be pretty cool. But I also understand why Cisco is doing it. So I'd say they're making a lot of steps. I'd say it's 4 or 5 steps forward for any side steps. But that, by the way, is a challenge for every one of these collab companies. So it's not a unique challenge to Cisco. Quickly on Cisco too, part of their strategy for growth has been a series of small but very intelligent acquisitions. And the company made 2 this week. And I'll just quickly touch on them because we got to get to the next topic. But Monday morning, the company came out and announced a acquisition of a company called IMI Mobile or IMI Mobile. And it's basically a contact center solution. Basically, Pat, you talked about some of these enhanced capabilities. Well, you're seeing contact center almost becoming closer to a customer data platform at this point, being able to fully, engage with data, high volumes that, goes beyond the enterprise suite. And that's what IMI Mobile or IMI Mobile is basically allowing them to do, is to use data beyond just what's in their system to get more consistent connections with customers, more enhanced interactive data with channels like social and messaging and voice, all part of the system that the contact center are going to be able to see. So this is a pretty smooth acquisition, especially what it can do based on about a $730 million deal. Now, for listening, remember Slackforce was a $27 billion deal. So this was 1/40th the size of that deal. And it gave some nice capabilities within the Cisco ecosystem. The other one is one that you've probably heard more about, and that's Slido.
Absolutely.
You've used it before. I used it today on a call with Cloudera, where you can kind of interact, ask questions, answer surveys. This was like a way, basically, this was the product that 2020 was begging for. Look, all these live and virtual meetings are dying for some interactivity. Slido is a great little way, inexpensive and efficient, to add interaction. You can do polls, you can ask questions, you can engage, you can respond to content. All in real time through the platform, which integrates into your meeting on WebEx, Zoom, and other platforms. Now, having said that, you got to kind of wonder what Cisco's intent here. Will Cisco continue to keep this open, or is this going to be something that gets baked into the overall platform? I think it'd be smart, at least for a while, to keep it open while they're figuring out the best way to apply it. But another smart little piece of business, there wasn't a disclosure in terms of price. By the way, this company has raised like nothing, and it got as far as it did. It was like one financial raise 3 years ago. I'm not even sure. I can't remember the number, but it wasn't very much. So it was a nice win. Slido, I think, is Eastern European, by the way, in terms of its roots, Pat. So interesting acquisitions right ahead of the WebexONE event. Lots going on for Cisco, enough to fill the time. We got to keep moving. I'm pretty sure you just messaged me that to let me know to start talking about something else. All right, next topic, Pat. Intel. We spent 3 days. We've got to hear a lot of NDA info, so we're only going to be able to keep this pretty high level for everybody. But we had 3 days of meetings, listening to some of the leaders across, from Bob Swan, the CEO, to some of their leaders in tech, to some of their leaders in data center and in client compute, as well as the labs business, Pat. So very much going on. You also wrote a really interesting piece this week about Intel Labs. We could probably talk about all this stuff for quite a while, but again, we can't share everything yet, but we will be sharing more soon. Pat, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, when this is, I put this on my calendar, I really went in and I wanted to assess Intel's strategy, Intel's fab position, their products, and AI from a training point of view. And high level, this was NDA. I want to tell you where I ended up. So first of all, on strategy, I still think that Intel's strategy is the right one. It's one that is 6 pillars. It's one that leverages the definition of compute, which Intel calls the XPU across multiple types of compute. I believe that for 20 years, and I still believe it here. And I also think right now IDM is still the right move for Intel, with the ability to tweak and tune the designs. And I think they're disaggregating the design, which makes a lot of sense. Now, then going into the fabs, which I think a lot of people think are completely broken. I ended up having more confidence about 7 nanometer, that I don't think it's going to wind up like 10. 10 nanometer for me has remained the same. I don't know yields. I don't know things like that. And I think it's important that even though you see desktop parts with features that are backported from 10 nanometer to 14 nanometer, those decisions had to be made. Those were made 2 years ago when 10 nanometer confidence wasn't high at all. And the other thing is, I don't think going to external fabs is a bad decision, and negates a potential cost and tweakability advantage as an IDM. And when you look at a customer point of view, and yes, I was a Intel customer for 10 years, you want a predictable cadence. You want it feature complete, you want it on time, and you want it at a good cost. And I think if Intel has to go to a third-party fab, I don't consider that a failure. I do find it pretty ironic that nobody can get enough 7 nanometer or 5 nanometer today. Super ironic instead. So then there's the products. I left being a lot more confident with the client computing roadmap. I think GB is a rock star, and he answered all my questions. As far as Xeon goes, my view hasn't changed as it was before, and I feel like the data center team will be leaning a lot more on co-engineering, marketing, and customer value. I'm going to leave it there. I can't say too much. AI, to me, the training part, a lot of that got answered through reInvent when we were talking about Habana Gaudi. And make no mistake, you can't give free silicon to an AWS and have them create an instance off of it. It needs to be leading edge. And I feel one CSP make not a market, but when you have a CSP like an AWS adopt Habana Gaudi for training, you know that there is something there. And if I look at the timing, and Habana has been inside the Intel portfolio for about a year, I believe that AWS likely gave the business to Habana. Intel knew that, and they didn't go with the Intel solution before. And Intel ended up buying Habana. And I think it's one of the advantages to being kind of a massive company. Intel is still the largest silicon company on the planet, that if you get into a jam on your own designs, you can go out and buy somebody else's design. Whew, there we go.
Yeah, quite a bit there, Pat. And, just a couple of thoughts I'll leave with there. One is I did definitely come back feeling a little bit refreshed and more confident. Look, there's no secret out there that Intel is under pressure. When you're the incumbent, when you're the biggest, everybody's gunning for you. you just have to know that that's the way. So the pressures are coming everywhere from Lisa Su, been doing a very good job at AMD, especially in the notebook business, but even on the EPYC business, competing with Xeon. We've seen new pressures there from NVIDIA, especially on the AI side. I mean, the company already had the market really pinned on the training side, and really saw a lot of growth in its inference side. The A100 only put further pressure there. You've got some pressure from even the cloud scale with Alibaba and Amazon, all doing their own silicon. So you've got, and then the ARM deal, which I didn't even mention, which is going to be massive. So there's a lot of forces, a lot of pressure, but Intel, as you said, is still the biggest. They still have a very encouraging roadmap. The disaggregation strategy, again, we can't get too deep into it, but the company clearly understands that it has a lot of IP, it has a lot of intelligence, and it needs to do some, it needs to do some innovation. It has the capabilities, it has the engineering, it has the resources to do those things. Last kind of thought is, you did mention on the Habana and the Gaudi. I just want to touch on that. Is, I do really think it was a great win for the company. Like you said, how that came about is maybe not a mystery, but the thing about it is wins are wins, and you can get at them from different angles. That market is explosive. So Trainium will grow. The A100 instances and NVIDIA will grow, and Gaudi will grow. This will be a great way. And I guess I hate saying it because everyone's like, oh, are you upset that they're offering their own instance on Trainium? And my whole thought process is AI is still so early in its infancy in terms of what it's going to do. That market share is going to grow exponentially. And Intel is in the race with the biggest hyperscale cloud provider in the world. And I have a pretty strong feeling that will likely lead to wins from other big hyperscale cloud players. So an encouraging week from Intel. Gonna, leave it there, move on to the next topic, Pat, which speaking of is AWS. So, reInvent, here we go, multiple weeks, multiple nights. I happened to take the Asia Pac schedule because my meeting schedule was so bad. I was doing these 9:30, 10 p.m. at night meetings. But it was good for me because I could kind of actually dial in and pay attention. Our Slack and our WebEx teams and our teams and our messenger apps are blowing up all day long. And so sometimes it's nice at 9:30 at night to watch a replay and actually absorb some stuff. But let's just do like a quick, 5 by 1 minute rundown, Pat. I want to talk about Proton, Babelfish, Io2 EBS Block Express, Connect, and Monitron panorama. So that's 5 topics. I'll start with Proton. Let's hit these up real quick though, like one minute each. All right. So first is, Proton, and Proton is effectively, going to be the company's management system for its container and serverless applications. The company, basically is rolling this out as a way to manage, automate CI/CD pipeline. They're going to work in partnership with a lot of the companies that do these, the observability tools like CodePipeline, CloudWatch. But what's really going on here is we're seeing the explosion of hybrid environments. We're seeing, the use cases grow and the scale grow. And, so offering these great tools in ECS and EKS and doing these anywhere is only part of the battle. The other part of the battle for companies is, how do I manage this? How do I manage the consistent upgrades, deployments, scheduling? And basically Proton is the company's answer. And by the way, a thematic part of the entire AWS was software. Nobody thinks about AWS as software. They're the IaaS player, and Google and Azure and IBM, they're the soft. Well, truth be told, AWS made a very legitimate case at this particular event that their plans around software are very big. So Proton, managed pipeline for Kubernetes and serverless, that was number 1. Pat, I'll let you take the next 2, starting with Babelfish.
Yeah, Babelfish. So a little background here. Microsoft has different pricing for SQL Server if you're an Azure customer versus if you're not. And I know that AWS has brought this up a bunch of times. So AWS's answer to this is Babelfish. And Babelfish, if you know, Babel is essentially a universal translator. And what this does is allows customers to take applications written for Microsoft SQL Server and put them on top of and run directly on Aurora PostgreSQL. And essentially that means potential trouble for Azure, but it opens up the availability to move your applications off of Azure and onto AWS. Probably not something that Microsoft is going to love, but Daniel, isn't competition great?
You know how I feel about that. Innovation is a highest common denominator. The more you push everybody, the more you're going to get from everybody. And so, game on is what I always like to say, as each one of these companies continue to innovate. So why don't you jump on to Io2?
Yeah. Io2 or EBS Block Express. So last August, they had launched Io2 volumes, 100x the durability and 10x more IOPS, so i.e. high performance. And now they brought out Io2 Block Express, 256K IOPS, 4K megabytes throughput, 64 terabytes of capacity, which net is SAN level performance in the cloud. So you can think of all the storage area network vendors out there who are like, oh my gosh, this is probably not a good thing for us. Now, I think where they're going to take this, Daniel, which I think is even more interesting, is imagine this on an outposts. So EBS Block Express Io2 literally would go head to head with the SAN providers. Okay. And that's Dell Tech. That is folks, who do a lot of the on-prem business. So anyways, I thought that was really interesting because it opens up a brand new market at performance levels that AWS has never operated at before.
Yep. And let's jump over to Connect. So, you heard us talking about WebEx and Contact Center. Well, they're not the only game in town. There are many others. And AWS has quietly built quite a little product with AWS Connect. And in this particular event, the company rolled out a whole series of new features, very compelling. And by the way, you're starting to hear this software story come together, talking about enriched AI, business intelligence, visualization tools. Pat, this stuff isn't on accident. Let's just be very clear. There is a thought process here. When I said the TAM might be all of IT, I wasn't kidding. So 5 announcements. I'll just run down real quick. Connect Wisdom, which gives contact center agents, a greater visibility to information they need to solve problems in real time. They came out with what's called Connect Customer Profiles, which gives a unified profile. Remember that little CDP comment? Everybody's working in that direction.
Yep.
Each customer they can use to provide more personalized service. By the way, when Twilio bought Segment, a giant CDP upstart, case in point. Anyway, real-time contact lens for Amazon Connect, which offers a capability for contact center managers to basically have a bigger impact over the interactions, to be able to, if there's an issue, it detects it more quickly and the person's able to respond to it. And then they came out with Connect Tasks. You're hearing a lot about low code and RPA. Well, Amazon's in that space too. And this is tasks is basically something that can do automation, tracking, managing task center activities for agents. And it's supposed to increase productivity, Pat, by up to 30%. And then the final one is Amazon Connect Voice ID, which is real-time caller authentication using machine learning powered analysis. Pat, back to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to do 2. They don't actually belong together, but we only wanted to talk about 5, but it's Monitron and Panorama, and put this in the category of AI and IoT. So Panorama is an appliance, and there's also an SDK. So an appliance, an actual edge box that you can use your existing cameras to do computer vision on for, let's say, quality control. If you're watching, the widget pass in line and you want to make sure it looks the same, or a candy bar has enough chocolate on it, otherwise it gets rejected. Workplace safety, when it comes to, hey, are people actually social distancing right? And you can imagine Amazon has a lot of experience in computer vision in their own not factories, but warehouses and distribution centers. And then you have Monitron, which is essentially using machine learning and in an IoT base to do predictive maintenance. So put that sensor on that piece of machinery, and instead of having to schedule a person to come in every week to come in and check it out, whether it's working well or not, it's using algorithms to tell you predictive based on historical when you need to come in, because you know there's a 99% that motor is going to go down and your auto manufacturing line is going to go down. So big picture though for Monitron and Panorama is Amazon AWS not just putting out the tools to just have you create all of these things, but more of a PaaS type of, or even when it comes to Panorama appliance, or a managed service for you to take something that they've gotten to a certain place, and then for you to customize that. Yeah,
heck of a lot of announcements, Pat. Well, let's break down AWS Nitro. No, I'm just kidding. That's for another time, another show. Let's jump over to some earnings, Pat. Oracle earnings. Oracle had a big week this week. The company, in my opinion, Pat, I think both of us have had a chance to get a little closer, get to know the company a little better over the last year. And the company's doing some good things. Its earnings this quarter, they sit right in the middle of what I would say, the big SaaS explosion and the traditional slow growth OEM IT space that we've looked at this year, right? So their legacy database on-prem hardware deployments have kind of been stagnant to almost soft this year. You're seeing, growth down 3%, 4%, 5%. Good news is their big business has been moving increasingly to cloud and the cloud licensing, and that business is growing, and it's year over year growing. Company saw 9.8 billion against, just beating its earnings, but also saw about a 2% year over year. They also beat on earnings per share as they've been able to maintain their margins during this period. And this has to do with two things, Pat. Cloud, 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 and cloud. That's four things. And then it's cloud. And SaaS. Pat, we like SaaS and cloud and chips, but SaaS and cloud have been very good for them. So what's going on with the SaaS and cloud business is we're seeing 20+% growth for their NetSuite business, 30+% for their Fusion business. These are their SaaS in the cloud offers. By the way, the Fusion, I believe, is the technology that Oracle uses to close its own books. And I know we're running long. Sorry, got distracted. But it's the tech they use to close their own books. And they go from close of their quarters to announcing earnings in 10 days. Think about that, though, in the industry. That's pretty cool. And I believe that's on Fusion. So 30%. And then you had the big cloud, by the way. And Larry Ellison said we grew over 100%. Well, let's give full credit, Larry. You're not one to not take full credit. It was 138% growth year over year on your Gen 2 cloud. Now, as I said when I went on TV earlier about this topic, I said the big opportunity here is it's growing enough. Okay, the cloud industry as a whole is growing and growing and growing. So everyone wants to say, is Oracle growing enough? Yes, it's growing enough. It's growing triple-digit percentages, Pat, against an industry that's still at about 25% saturation. So yes, of course, Oracle wants to beat AWS and wants to beat Azure, but Oracle just continuing to grow at this rate. Whether it's the Fusion apps growing at this rate, which is equal to what Salesforce and Microsoft are growing in their cloud apps in that same range. And the cloud, they're growing at the rate that's actually faster. So really solid overall. And yes, I hogged it all, Pat, but you know what? You took the Cisco section, so I took a little extra here.
Okay. Yeah. So the big highlights for me, I think they were similar. Now, biggest highlight was Fusion ERP at 33%, NetSuite ERP at 21%, and that's just coming right out of SAP. There is no, I have no doubt that is the case, and they Oracle keeps moving quarter after quarter with this. And while I was glad to see the triple digit OCI Gen 2 hit it, I still thought it needed to be more than that because Gen 2 is not that old. So your growth had to be significant. But what Larry said on the call made me feel better when he said, we ran out of capacity. We just ran out of capacity. We couldn't take any more. And they were going to work on their CapEx to open more data centers. That made me feel a lot better. And I did also like, this was a change, right? Their earnings were 20 minutes shorter than it typically is usually Larry Ellison was going to go down big customer wins, but I'm going to help him do it. Some of the ones that caught my attention were Equinix, T-Mobile, and First Solar. And I really do love it because I think in certain areas of the business, particularly OCI and cloud fusion apps, I think they need to show that, hey, the water's fine. Come on in. Look at all these people taking advantage of our IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So I think those are very meaningful, and these customer stories are not just a bunch of blow-offs. And particularly, I like because Larry points the competition that they came from.
Yeah, you make a lot of great points. And sorry I hogged that one. I got the list backwards. I don't know. Maybe we should stop doing these at 6 o'clock at night on a Friday when my brain is not so,
6:30. I know. It's 30 here. No, let's keep.
I'm doing my best Joe Kernan impression from Squawk Box. I'm just all over the place. Like you're like, what's that guy doing? I don't know. It's Friday.
It's all good, man.
I'm having a little fun, but you know what? We covered the ground, and so there's the challenge back to Oracle. I said 138% is enough. Pat says more. Either way, keep on growing. But again, more competition, more innovation. There is room and apparently not enough capacity. So we're growing. So let's talk about growing on-prem. HPE Greenlake Day. Pat, by the way, we were going so long today. Everybody bear with us. We're going to call ourselves the 6-7 today because we've gone at least 2 minutes long on every topic. So HPE, because there wasn't a lot going on this week, decided to add an event, and they did Greenlake Day. And it was an event focusing on the company's whole everything as a service model, been one of the most popular growth areas, over $500 million in recurring revenue now for the organization, and continued offerings that are really helping to drive more revenue. The focus of this event was kind of twofold. It was an announcement around a new HPC offering, Pat. And by the way, this one I was going to take, but do you want it, or you want me to keep going?
Sure. I mean, and again,
I took yours, so I just, we're a little banter, a little friendly banter here. I was just going to give you the mic because I did.
No. So top line here, Greenlake HPE was I would say the first traditionally on-prem vendor to go fully as a service, or at least say every one of our products will be available as a service. And I feel like that sent shockwaves throughout the industry. Not that other folks weren't doing that, but that it was the proclamation that everything would be. And in this case, we saw them get very vertical on I would say a workload or an industry. So high performance computing. Now, I think it's a smart move for HPE to go more vertical if it's going to try to get hybrid cloud business, because the horizontal cloud, particularly the public cloud, they don't necessarily participate in. But the vertical cloud, I think companies like HPE, and we've seen some activity with Oracle and IBM going vertical, is a smart move. And I think HPE brings a lot of credibility to HPC from their previous acquisitions of Blue Data is a good one, but also of Cray on the platform. Cray knows high performance computing, and so does Blue Data. And so if the company has success anywhere, this is where I would expect it to do well. Strong infrastructure, strong software wrapped in a unique Greenlake consumption model.
Yeah, Pat, and you know what? Like I said, sorry for throwing you that ball, but I felt like I kind of hogged the mic. So sometimes in the spirit of our partnership here, and everyone out there listening that want to hear a little more Pat and a little less Dan, I want to make sure they got it. So listen, I got to listen to Pete Ungaro actually on Yahoo Finance the other day. He did a really good presentation. He leads that HPC business. I'm really encouraged about what the company's doing. This was kind of the differentiation that HPE needed, and they are ahead. The company is ahead of the curve with some of the tools. Now, that's not to say that the OEM industry and the IBMs, the Ciscos and Dells won't all be gunning for the company, but I think that Greenlake's done a good job getting out in front and understanding user experience, understanding their 37% market leadership in HPC was an area that the company could lean into. So essentially just a couple of things about the HPC service, and then we'll move on. One is it's being integrated quickly into Greenlake Central, which is that hub that is really giving that control plane level of being able to deploy workloads and see all your analytics and data. So that's the first thing. So you can optimize your HPC services there. There's a self-service dashboard. So you can basically enable, your users to run, manage HPC clusters on their own without, any disruption to current workloads, just using point and click functions. So that's good. Consumption analytics. This is where it gets more and more like public cloud. Because of what Greenlake is doing is creating that public cloud experience on-prem, they're giving you at a glance analytics of usage and cost for your HPC, which is something people obviously want to pay attention to. And then they're kind of packaging. They're adding a whole series of like AI and apps, Pat, which kind of goes back to what you were saying, like about verticals, right? They're adding more packaging, more simplicity, more streamlining, so you can use HPC for very specific but common applications where this technology provides additional value for customers. So a positive set of announcements. Greenlake, keep going, chug, chug. We like what you're seeing. Let's wrap this baby up, Pat. Let's put a bow around it because we're running late. Let's talk about a little humanity. We started with migrations from California to Texas. Now we're going to talk about another company that's really putting a lot of weight and a lot of effort into doing more for the planet. So this week, Amazon made two big announcements. It was basically some enhancements to its climate pledge and some announcements around upskilling. I'm going to just touch on these brief and we can just riff on them. But first of all, you've probably heard about the Amazon Climate Pledge. Essentially, if you haven't, it's really all about, in accordance with the Paris Agreement of being carbon neutral by 2040, these companies are committing to actually beating that agreement by 10 years and being carbon neutral by 2030. Amazon has had a plethora of companies that have joined it in this agreement, but this week it had a really big piece of news as one of its biggest competitors, Microsoft, as it decided to join Amazon's climate pledge. So that was I thought a really big win and a big note that these two companies, which compete fiercely in the cloud, have decided to, we may compete fiercely in the cloud, but we are both committed to doing better for the planet and bringing carbon neutrality to our businesses in a short-circuited amount of time. Now, there's a lot of other companies, Pat, running shoes company Brooks, and I have a whole list in front of me, and I apologize that I can't remember who they all are. But let's see. This week it was Unilever, Microsoft, Coca-Cola European Partners, Atos, the big services company, Brooks, as I mentioned, and a few other companies just this week. But there were some other big ones that have also come through over the past several months. So that's the climate one. Real quickly, also, the company made some really big announcements around upskilling. And so you might have heard about the Upskilling 2025. This is something that the company's goal was to basically invest something like $700 million, upskill 100,000 employees within Amazon, and probably the only program on the planet that was more focused on its own workforce than the ones that Salesforce, Google, Microsoft have put forth that are really all about educating the world. Both important, but Amazon is a really unique use case because it has so many lower paid, blue collar type jobs in the company and people that will likely be at risk of automation displacing them over time. So what the company did now was it expanded with the goal of being able to help another 29 million people around the world, beyond the 100,000 in the company, to build out a library of 500 courses, interactive labs, virtual day-long trainings, offering free AWS certification, which obviously becoming a cloud engineer of some type would be a good way to get things going. An AWS START program for underrepresented communities and helping people in those communities to transition into tech jobs, Pat. And then finally, doing some piloting work around a whole new set of training programs. So, mouthful. Trying to do that really fast, so I left a little time for you since we are like running the 8-5 now.
No, I appreciate that. The only thing I wanted to add in there is another very impactful announcement they made was that Amazon is now the largest corporate buyer of renewable energy in a single year. They added 26 new utility scale wind and solar projects, which took them to a total of 35 in 2020. For more than 4 gigawatts of capacity. And again, I think these things make a statement. Amazon is one of the biggest companies out there, and I think it's important for them to do things like this because they have massive data centers, they have distribution centers, and they're on track to have 1 million employees in the United States. So all of these types of good for the environment and good for society things, I think really takes the edge off of the fact that it's a very successful and well-run business that some people seem to have an issue with a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. Well, it's one of those things, and I'll leave it on this because you made some great comments there, is when you get this big, you're always going to be ripe for scrutiny. Facebook felt the wrath this week. We didn't cover it because it's a little bit more consumer and everyday, but 48 states and the federal government all suing you at the same time. That seems like a coordinated effort to break you up. Amazon's been seeing a series of suits in the European Union and certainly is under scrutiny here. Google is also in that, and Apple in its App Store, which is absolutely, in my opinion, the ripest potential territory for some scrutiny. But they're doing a lot of things, Pat. Huge job creator amidst the whole pandemic, big investment in sustainability, a facilitator of getting goods and services to people throughout this entire pandemic. So I always say, there's nothing better than people complaining about Amazon as they order their groceries to be delivered by Amazon, only to follow up by complaining about Facebook on Facebook. But I'll leave it here with that last thought. So Pat, happy 6-5 day. Happy Friday. Everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. Hopefully you hung in long with us. We're sorry. We just have a lot to say, but hit that subscribe button. Join us more often. We'll be here live on the weekly. We also are over on Apple. If you want to get our podcast over there, we also can be found on our YouTube channels, and we'll put a bunch of show notes together with links to different thoughts, articles, research notes, and places where you can learn more about all the things we talked about. But got to say goodbye. We'll see you later.